to be reflected as nays in this.
According to Robert's rules, in any organization where it is desired to allow less than a majority vote to order a count or tellers or special rule, any vote to be taken by a roll call requires a special rule to be less than a majority. In the absence of such a special rule, a majority vote is required in order to take a vote or a roll call, in which case a motion to do so is likely to be useless, since its purpose is normally to force the majority to go on record. Since we do not have a rule for taking roll call votes by less than a majority, therefore a majority vote on a request for roll call is required in order for the taking of a vote by roll call. According to Alan Healy, certified professional parliamentarian, regarding valid votes where there are any exceptions to the rule regarding a roll call vote when they are performed not according to the proper procedure, the black letter law in Robert's Rules of Order means what it says. Any action taken is null and void. The point of order to that effect can be made at any time by any person, whether they attended the meeting or not, in which the violation occurred. According to Robert's Rules of Order, page 241, I-222, because of the exception to the rules of timeliness, where a rule is protecting a basic right of an individual member, any action that is taken is a violation of fundamental principle of parliamentary law, and therefore not only shall the actions be null and void, but any member has the right to request all of that information to be expunged from the record. Voting by roll call, when the roll calls for a ballot by any other method, violates the right of an individual member not to expose on the record their vote. Robert's Rules of Order, page 255, 19 to 22. If you still want to make that motion, we will have to vote on it, but it's out of order.
I will just simply state for the record that I think that, I'm assuming then by what you're saying is you as the member are requesting that to be expunged.
No, I did not request it. Another member requested it of me immediately after the meeting.
And then, so simply I will just be voting against this by the mere fact that I think it's a moot point and should just simply reflect the request. It's written, it's on the videotape that's been in cycle for a month.
On the videotape, it's in context and easily understood. As a permanent record, it's not in context.
That'll be another issue dealing with the agenda.
So, as I understand it, you have a problem with the first part of it. How about the second part of it, where we wanted to make it a special meeting?
No,
And
That's a separate issue. Nothing was out of order.
That reflects what actually happened. The first part does not reflect what happened at the meeting.
there was no hand count on the second motion then?
Well, hand count, that's fine.
Roll call.
Roll call is what's out of order.
There is a standing order to do division, as was passed at the last meeting.
I see.
The agenda review roll call where names are listed
And we obviously have the option to discuss that procedure in the future, but at this point, as I interpret Robert's Rules of Order, we have no choice. We are not allowed by Robert's Rules of Order to record that roll call vote.
Mr. Chair, on a separate item, I don't see listed, although I believe it was the last meeting where it was determined that division was going to be standard process just simply for record keeping.
Yeah, that was an interpretation of our bylaws, which everybody agreed to.
Should the minutes then just simply reflect that there was consent of the body to interpret the bylaws in that regard?
I think we can add that. Add to the minutes that it was consensus that the bylaws, the wording of the bylaws indicates automatic vote by raised hands. Okay, any other discussion on the minutes? Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. At this point, even before we approve our agenda, because of discussion that might entail, I would like to request a motion that we go ahead with our first agenda item as the attorney has to leave, and I would like to have an opportunity to talk with him.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion?
I would concur, Stan, and I'm assuming that this body is paying for the attorney's presence here at this time.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. As your agenda says, Kathleen Miller and Scott have been requested. Yes.
Point of order. Dan, are you joking?
No, I'm assuming that the request was made by this group to have the city attorney present, and this group would be paying for his...
Can we not go into that at this point? It's not germane.
All right.
The issue on the table is discussion primarily of the issue of department head directors, the letter that we're talking about writing back, and also our consideration of that section of the charter, 602 sub 3, that we in the future may well want to amend, and how we would want to amend it. So if Kathy and Scott can join us. You have a copy of an email that I got from Kathleen, I'm sorry, which is just a very short, quick response, and I didn't even ask Kathleen's permission to distribute it, but it was the only thing we had for a starting point. And I have explained to a couple of people, I didn't give her a lot of time to develop this either. I sent her the request for it just very shortly before our meeting, so she was requested to throw it together in a big hurry a month ago, and now it's been sitting here. But I think that it reasonably discusses a lot of issues and different points of view as starting points. Maybe you could just elaborate on that a little bit, and then we can have questions as to what that means for effect.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
before we go any farther, I'd like to have this subdivision read aloud for the people at home so they understand what the charter says.
Okay, the section we're dealing with primarily is Chapter 6 of the Charter, Administration of City Affairs. Under Section 6, Administration Responsibilities, goes to Subdivision 3, which states, "The head of department and other officers designated by the council shall report in person to the council and to the public at least once each quarter at regularly scheduled council meetings."
That's the charter's
That's the statement of the charter that
requirement of the
the
charter.
the compliance of that section has come into question, and we've been requested to respond both to the current situation as to our opinion, which is an interesting point altogether by itself, whether or not our response has any legal merit, but we felt that since the request was made, that we definitely should, and we have in fact drafted a letter that we'll work on later tonight. But in terms of looking closer at it and whether or not the language currently is clear enough, and if it isn't, what kind of changes we should make, we thought it appropriate that we discuss this with both the administration and the attorney.
And if I could just give you my thoughts on this. I can tell you that if I read this, what I see is that department directors should regularly appear before the city council, which they do. We have department directors that are pretty much in attendance at all of the meetings. I have some concerns with this particular item if I'm not sure what the intention is. If the intention is that an individual will appear before the city council so the city council could, for lack of a better term, micromanage a department, I have a problem with that. And because I don't think as a city council you can really manage effectively a department. That's why you have me. And, but if the intent is so that there's a better understanding philosophically about what's going on in the department, there's larger issues that can be dealt with because council's authority really is to create policy. And I can think of a couple of examples. When I pick up the newspaper and I read that there's been an accident because of a high-speed chase within a police department, I wonder what our policy is and what the city council's comfort level is with that policy, and if they were involved in the creation of that policy. Or do we wait until there's an accident and then we react? I think those are the kinds of issues that could be discussed philosophically at a work session with a department. Another example would be community development and the use of TIF and how we're going to utilize that as a tool and what the city council's comfort level is with the utilization of that. But if the intent is to bring a department director before the city council and to have some sort of inquisition about the department, my opinion is, for what it's worth, is that would be inappropriate.
You missed something. It's not just the council, it's and to the public, so that the public...
Okay, and when I say the council, I understand that the public is represented as well. I lost my train of thought now.
I'm sorry.
I think I agree with the inappropriateness of the Inquisition environment. And we've been faced with two separate dilemmas here. One, the original request talked about the intent of the authors, that because we have several members that were on that original commission, that we should investigate what they meant by it. And in discussions with the other attorneys and with discussions with Duke Addicts of the League of Minnesota Cities, we were really counseled to try not to go down that road, even though that was the request. Because...
And I understand in reading the paper that Mr. Warner has one opinion, and I know that Mr. I forget his name. McCarty, thank you, has another opinion that are not necessarily one in the same.
We've spoken with four now of the original members, and I think that all of them have a slightly different opinion.
Right.
And I think that, in fairness to them, and every charter commission body, the individual members' opinions were very carefully thought out and worked together to create a document that they felt fairly reflected all of their opinions and did the important things. And I think that there is maybe a little bit of an unfortunate wording in the way it's done now that doesn't clearly specify, so it does need some work, which is why the questions arise. And what Duke Addicts counseled us was that as you look at those kinds of revisions, and if the questions arise, look at them in that light, that future interpretation would be clear and not too restrictive on what the city is able to do, and doesn't indicate that kind of thing where it could be made into an inquisition. I don't think that was ever part of the intent on anybody's opinion.
Well, and let me just add to my concern. Of late, I've heard concerns that we've recently had 2 terminations, for example, and that if we would have had these quarterly meetings, those could have been avoided. I can tell you that that is absolutely untrue, because the kinds of things that enter into a performance issue are not necessarily the things that you're going to talk about at a public meeting. And so I would like to dispel that I don't think a city council meeting is necessarily the forum or the format that you could properly evaluate the performance of individuals within the city.
Let me ask you a question. If you hadn't gotten this kind of interrogation for the, let's say, the golf course manager, from the golf course manager in front of the public, would you have gotten more information maybe for your own decisions as to what's going on?
For my own decisions.
Yeah.
I don't
Your own
take-
information. Wouldn't you have gotten more information as to what was happening over there?
I think there were a lot of questions that were asked. I don't think we
Where
were.
did you
ne-
get the answers to them?
I don't think that we were necessarily always provided with the answers to the information. Again, I mean, we had lots and lots of public meetings where the golf course was discussed. I don't think it would have changed anything.
Do you think maybe it would have changed the public's reaction? Do you think it might have, if the public would have known more, it might have changed their reaction as to what happened?
Well, performance is one of those things that and Scott, jump in anytime you want. It's
Maybe.
real difficult to discuss performance in a public setting because it sets the city up for a lawsuit. There's a need to be very, very careful when you're discussing those kinds of issues.
And I will jump in there just for one quick second. Obviously, the city's at somewhat of a disadvantage because they don't comment on comments that are made to the news media. And they don't for a very particular reason because of, as Kathleen explained, many of these items that have been spoken in the papers, things like that, or could be, even if they were attempted to be brought up at meetings, they're not public data, which means it's personal to that individual, whatever that person may be, and it can't be discussed by the council without serious ramifications. So the city's at a disadvantage. In these two situations, I don't know what else could have been discussed personnel-wise, and maybe some of that will come out later, but the city can't respond to it. They're prohibited by statute. And until they can do that, until something is final, city's at a disadvantage and sits silent and really can't contradict any of the, whatever report shows up in the St. Paul Pioneer Press or the Bulletin or whatever media it might be. So.
But it's not just performance either. I mean,
It's a matter of, the reason we put this here is so that quarterly, at a rotation, city council has staff in, and they can ask questions personally. They don't have to go through the clerk administrator, or the public can ask questions of that department, what's going on in there. Get some information. That's what it's about. There isn't a lot of information to the public. Government just gets things done. But, this is an older community with some of us older people in it. We like to find out what's going on. And that was one of the reasons why we required it. It's required. It's not optional. It's required.
As an example, I had what I thought was some legitimate questions to ask of Mike Aldrich in the maintenance department over there. Well, not only could I get no answers, clear answers from the city council or him who was there sometimes. That's when he was taking over, though. And I was then told to write it up in a questionnaire and give it to him. And I was made painfully aware that it took enormous amounts of staff time. And all the questions that I asked, I felt were gone around. He didn't give me any clear. I'm not a lawyer or anything. I suppose I didn't word it quite right to where he couldn't get out of some of them things. But a lot of it wasn't, and I felt as if he was there at that kind of a meeting to try and pinpoint and get some clear answers from him. And that's for the public, not so much for the city council either. That was mostly for the public. I understand what you mean about an inquisition and how it could turn into one. But when you're asking what you think are some legitimate questions and they go around them, it's very frustrating.
And I can understand your concern, and I don't want to get into individuals at this point. And yet, I have some concerns about what you just said, that an employee comes and you want to drill them with questions. I think there is a format for if you have questions about an individual department and specific things that are happening. If you're not getting responses to those questions, certainly there is a way of going about it. We deal with questions every day. Someone calls and they'll say, I have a question about such and such, or I was treated rudely by so-and-so. Those things are followed through on. I don't know what your circumstances were. Typically, when we get questions at City Hall, we try to address them, and we try to do it in as quick a fashion as possible.
That's probably the best response.
One of the things, Kathleen, that I would like to see us try to come to some conclusions on is what might be good recommendations for that process. If this process simply now says they shall report, and obviously that term is pretty nebulous in what it means, what might be a better terminology? What might provide a mechanism or a process if that idea of the department heads reporting to the council and the public in a regular scheduled meeting doesn't seem the appropriate way to get questions answered? What is an appropriate way, and what should we consider?
I'm still going back to my original question, is what is the intent of this? Is the intent to provide you with information so there's a better knowledge of what goes on in the department? Or is the intent to sit a person down and ask questions of an individual nature?
Well, I've heard both, that it not necessarily individual nature, but more of a process nature. A way to get answers about how many squad cars did we buy. Obviously, you can go to the clerk administrator or to the front desk, and you can use the Data Privacy Act and whatever to request information, and you can get it. But that doesn't share that information with the public. So what they really wanted in this, as I understand it from the discussions we've had, is a mechanism where somebody can come in because they feel like there's an area of something that's going on that has become a common concern, and they would like that question answered publicly.
And see, I think there is that opportunity. I think we have a report section on the city council, a section on every city council meeting where members of the public can come and make comments about individual items that are not currently on the agenda. The process that I would like to see is that if you had a question about a particular department, you would raise it at that meeting, and staff would then take it and try to answer it and bring it back to the city council at a future council meeting. But I think I could not imagine saying to staff members that, okay, it's your turn.
We do it in business. I know. We do it in business.
And I think we tend to be, we do it at council meetings. We have people ask us questions all the time. I think there's a method of doing it that lends a certain respect to it, that doesn't put a person in a position where, it's firing off questions and hoping that they have the right answer at that given moment. Sometimes you don't have the immediate answer that might be necessary.
Well, I think often the response might be that we'll have to look into that.
And that's what I'm saying, that during every city council meeting, there is the opportunity to ask questions, then to have staff come back at a future meeting and address those issues. I mean, we have it happen virtually every week.
Roger.
I think the point is kind of being overlooked here, is the fact that on a scheduled basis, on a quarterly basis, the public would know that a specific director would be coming down to report on their department. And that would, to me, would mean, when the many years I've worked in a corporation, when I've reported on something, I've reported the status of my project, the status of your budget status. I think Mr. Werner made a good write-up in the paper about it. And by bringing somebody forth to report, they present a report. They either do it verbally or give an overhead or something of the status of where they started at the beginning of the year, where they are now, are they falling short, are they ahead of the game? And, to let the public know what's coming what the status of that particular department is. And the reason it's important to do it on a quarterly basis in advance is to provide the residents the information to know that that will be there, not just at a regular meeting we have an opportunity for some individual to, one person to ask a question, is to let the entire city know that if you have questions on this, there'll be a presentation made on the status of that project. And one other question, I take exception, I hate to in public here, but I do take exception to the way you stated that you didn't think that any of the department heads reporting to the council would have made any difference. I'm a council member, and I've asked many times for a reporting of Innovative Images to see where they were with their dollars, the number of bookings they had, and where we were with the status. I've been unable to receive it. Now, if they would have ever got to before the council and made a presentation, that should have all came out. So I do take
Well,
exception
and
with that.
I certainly don't recall that inquiry while I was here. And if you
Oh,
would have
it's
posed...
absolutely, Kathleen.
No, I don't want to disagree with you in public, but I do not remember that inquiry while I was here.
You don't recall me ever bringing to your attention the fact that we have a charter requirement requiring these to be presented?
Oh, that I do recall.
All right, all right.
But you're saying that you asked a question regarding Innovative Images, and...
Yes, I want to know the status of this department that's being run over here as under Innovative Images. I also want to know what the YMCA is doing and our enterprise funds at the golf course. I want to know all of them, as well as the department heads that are within the city. And I think as a council member, have a right to know that, and I think the public has a right to know that. That's where we have a difference.
I'm not disputing that you have a right to that information. I'm simply disputing the venue of how it is that we come about providing you with that information.
Okay, I think the charter pretty explicitly tells the median for handling that, to have them report on a quarterly basis. Now, if you question what report means, where I've worked, report was pretty clear. You look in the dictionary, it's pretty clear what it means. And if you want to play legal games, what does it mean? Well, we can do that. But
No.
report means you report on the status of your department as to the fiscal responsibility for the budgeting process that you have for that year. And that's a report made to the council and to the public, supposedly on a quarterly basis. I see no problem with that at all.
Very good.
I understand that there is a tremendous difference between business and government, and we do have public meetings we do have public meetings on a regular basis, and all of our information is available. Decisions are made publicly, and so while there's the need to do that for a business, I'm not sure that need necessarily is
You don't
here.
think the public should know? They're the
I'm not
payers, they're the
saying that.
taxpayers. I think they have a status, just like the corporation.
Mr. Chairman,
The corporation
this
that I
is
work
devolving.
for.
Roger,
Okay.
I think that what we really are looking for now is what her opinions are on where we go. And I think she's done pretty good at that
Okay.
in expressing her concerns. I'd like to know, Scott, if you have any, you brought up a very good point about the fact that the council can't ask questions that would require an individual's personal response about their personal relationship with the city. But as we look at how to refine this whole idea, we obviously going to go a number of ways, but how would it be handled if the public asked a question, if a department head is there and they asked a question that would be of that kind of a personal nature? Would it be the mayor's responsibility to try to referee that question, or?
Well, that's where it becomes difficult, obviously, because you put the mayor in a position, or whoever's chairing the meeting, yourself at this meeting, in a position of basically, like you said, refereeing and saying, no, that's out of order, you can't ask that question because you're asking for X, Y, Z, and that is non-public data under Minnesota Data Practices Act. That would assume that whoever is chairing the meeting knows that entire section, which was 90-plus pages long, things like that, and I won't vouch for that. You'll get a response that we will check what the data is and we will review it. And you see, and the commissioner's opinions on many of those provisions change. So a question like that is very hard to answer. I mean, I don't know. We had a situation like that. We've had it before where non-public data has been questioned or somebody's asked about it. Non-public data can be discussed in certain situations, but it has to be protected. And the governing body has the ability to discuss data of non-public nature with some protections, but there's also just greater liabilities that attach to that. If a department head, and I'm not sure what type of question you would come up with that would fall in that category, where you'd have to say, no, that's out of line, but there could be some. I mean, it could be a situation, well, did you do so-and-so, and did this employee do that? Possible defamatory at that point in time, if it's not true. And somebody responds and says, well, I heard you did this, and it's a fact. And it goes out on your video teleplay, and everybody now believes that's the given fact.
Mr. Chairman, that isn't really what the intent is here.
Oh, and I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that that's where it
isn't
could
what-
digress.
That isn't what my experience has been when I served on the council after the charter was in place. And we had every department head report quarterly, and it wasn't a fiasco, and there was information that the public and the council could glean that it's just a forum. But the public has to have some access. It's a public meeting, and they want information of what's going on in departments, and it's hard to get information out of government. We as a city did a study, and the people we hired to do the study had to use the Freedom of Information Act to get information from the county and the state, because they'd never been asked those questions before. And it was frustrating to have to do that with government. Now, why does the public, when we've got it written in our charter, have to have some Freedom of Information Act in place?
Because it has to be read in conjunction with state law.
Yeah.
I mean, the charter does have to be read in conjunction
Right.
with that. So that is the response to that issue. Just because it's in the charter doesn't mean it trumps everything that's out there. Doesn't
but
trump
it-
the case law. No, I'm just saying that there.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's information that the public would like to have
Oh,
sometimes.
and I understand.
And
I
if
don't
one
want to
person
say
wants to
that
know
I'm
something-
against giving information to the public or to answering questions. It's the forum
Non-personal.
that I'm,
Non-personal information.
right.
This worked the first 4 years of the charter. There wasn't any problem.
If I could underline something that the chair asked, we could debate this for a while, but it seems to me like there ought to be a way. I think we all understand the desired intent here. Can you help us with some wording that will perhaps further expand on what report means in a way that protects the personal rights of the individual, so that we can write something into that will give us the information and the public the information we're looking for.
It's there right now. It works. It worked before. Why doesn't it work now?
But it must have come up for a reason.
No.
Well,
Doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it came
okay.
up for a reason.
Yeah,
We
let-
wanted
let's
to know
say
what was
we're-
going
okay,
on.
Just a minute. There's a very good explanation for that, which Dwayne gave us at our last meeting, Commissioner McCarty, in that over a period of time, the council on their own volition decided that this could easily also be interpreted that the department heads are there at least every quarter. They're available to answer questions, which fulfills at least the spirit, if not our interpretation of the semantics.
Not the spirit.
Uh,
Not the spirit.
Well, in their interpretation, it fulfilled, because they're there and available to answer questions, and they are giving reports to the council on a regular basis, that they have actually met the requirements. Now, if we just agree with that, then, like Duke Attic told us, if our feeling is that the language is no longer adequate to be clearly understood, then that's where we want to go, and that's where some help from, maybe Scott has to help us a little. But we want it, I think that clearly the intent is that there would be some kind of a physical report given quarterly by each department head, and an opportunity to at least review that report. Now, I personally don't feel that the intention is that you would put somebody on the stand and rip apart their department, but that they would give a report and everybody would have an option to ask questions if there's not something to understand about that report, or clarify something about that report, and that would be equally available to both the council and the public. One of the reasons that comes up for discussion is if that report is not done in a section of the meeting where there is a public comment available, then the public can't make comments. And so that's why it's important that it be worded so that it pertains to both the council and the public being able to ask questions. But how we craft that and how we all come to a uniform feeling of that being the way we want to do it, that's going to take some work, but I think we need someplace to start. And I don't think that the original intent was ever an inquisition.
And
And-
as you stated that way, if it's a report that a department director would provide to the council and to the public, and that report would be the basis of the discussion, I don't think any of the department directors would have a problem with that. I think it's when we start talking about, and I'm sorry, but I don't know your name, about someone coming in with a laundry list of complaints that they have about that department, and they want that person to appear before so that they could read those off. That's, you're talking about a very different scenario.
Actually, it wasn't a laundry list.
Okay,
It was some
I
legitimate
embellished a bit.
questions
I'm
about
s-
spending
Okay.
that they were doing over there.
Okay.
Which I had tried to raise before, at previous council meeting.
Okay, and
got nowhere.
And certainly asking questions about how individuals are spending within their departments. We have a number of opportunities for that. We have our budgeting process. We also have what has been implemented since I've been on staff, and that's quarterly reporting, where each department, the finance department puts together a report that shows where we were, where our budget is, where we were last year with the budget, and where we are currently with this year. That provides a venue for discussion, that if there is a question.
Is that report currently public data?
Pardon?
Is that report currently public data?
Yes, it is.
And so anybody who wants that report can come in here and get it?
That is correct.
And when does the council get that?
Quarterly. Your latest one is a little bit late. The format of it is changing. The interim finance director has asked if she could just change the format a little bit because it was a little bit confusing. So we're working out some changes with it, and you should be getting the most recent quarterly report within the next week or so.
From a more practical standpoint, how difficult would it be for each department head to present that report quarterly, in person at a council meeting?
You know, rather than, I'd rather not respond to, I'd like to take these ideas back and talk with the staff
Okay.
members and get their input.
Does anyone who hasn't asked any questions have any? I don't want to have a couple of us monopolize this. Dan?
Yes, one is just simply a statement that questions are always legitimate in the eyes of the inquisitor. So it's certainly a thing where, you know, a person who comes in and asks always is going to believe they've got the right to ask it, even if it's a gotcha setup type situation. But the question comes in just simply the process. Do you see it, Kathleen, as something that would be better from your standpoint, is either setting up a date and time where you bring everybody in, or over the course of time, if the police chief is there anyhow presenting something, to simply just put another agenda item and have them present it there, so you don't have to take time out of their schedule to come back for a special meeting, which takes them away from their duties during the day because of...
Obviously, that would be the least painful. We all attend a lot of meetings, and if we could have a department director appear and talk with the council and the public at a meeting where they're going to be in attendance anyway. I mean, for Jim Erickson, that's not going to be a problem. He's at every meeting. For myself, Giovanna, it will not be a problem. For the chief, he doesn't attend that many meetings, so yeah, my preference would be to schedule him for a meeting that he had an item already on the agenda.
Thank you.
Well, I think you have a pretty good idea of what kind of answers we're looking for, and maybe the two of you can figure out some kind of a response that you can get back to us for our review.
And I'd like to take the liberty of talking about this with the department directors as well. You know, it's not that they're resistant to meeting with and talking with the public. That isn't it. I think there is some concern with just the nature of it. And I think if we could come up with a format that we all feel that will be respectful and yet answer questions and be open, I don't think anyone would have a problem with that.
Okay. Scott, can I put you on the spot? Have you had a chance to look at Chapter 10 and 11?
A little bit, yeah. And quickly on those issues, you certainly can remove these from the charter. You have the ability to do that. The issue becomes what controls, which is really state law. And the easiest way to do this, if you were going to remove it from the charter, would be have a reference to state law that franchises will be handled, et cetera, by Minnesota law as amended, and likewise with, which is not as significant with Chapter 11 because it talks about public ownership. But I don't think there's a problem with taking it out. It's just that you can't take it out entirely. You should have something in the charter that basically says, all right, absent that, it'll be controlled by state law. You have kind of a catch-all provision in your charter, obviously, that does that. I think it'd be easier if you modified Chapter 10 to be Section 1001, and it says franchising, whatever utility it is, are controlled by state law, et cetera, and leave it as simple as that. So is anything implicated? I think your question was anything implicated that would prevent it? Technically, no. I mean, because you will have some body of law that does control it, whether it's the charter or it's state statutory law. That's what will be there. If they wanted to.
Scott, can I ask you one back to where we were before with the head of department?
Okay.
In the wording was read that's in the charter. Do you find any legal shortcoming there? Or to me, it's perfectly clear what it says, but I'd like your legal
I'll be honest.
interpretation.
Any attorney can come up with
I know.
any multitude of ways to change the semantics of what's there. You know,
Is there a legal shortcoming in our charter in your perception?
well, I mean, if you're really going to have, well, certainly you could put in they have to appear verbally, in person, and verbally prepare a report. Also have it in writing. I mean, you could certainly put a number of qualifiers in there that really delineates what's
Do you
supposed to be.
really think
done.
that's necessary?
No, I don't.
Neither do I.
And because I mean, it sounds like the give and take that's been exchanged, you can arrive at a usable medium without having to do that. The charter is a guiding document. It's not the end-all, be-all. It gives authority to the council to do certain things within the framework of state constitution, state statutes, federal statutes, case law, things like that. It's the guiding document for the city. It's the city's constitution, in essence. So, no, I don't think there's reason to put many more qualifiers on it.
I noticed too, Kathleen already did say that the department directors already write reports. And you indicated some of the things that are in that report, and I think that's the kind of thing we're looking for.
I can't remember in the 4 years I sat on the council where we had the occasion of interrogating somebody to the point where there was a problem. And the intent here is for information. There's a lot of things that people would like to know, and they don't. And a lot of them don't even know the right question. So if somebody comes up with the right question, the light bulb goes on, and a lot of people get the information. But government has a problem there in it's a busy job. You're going from the first minute you get in the door till
The meeting ends
8 o'clock,
3 in the morning.
9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock. With us, it was 2 in the morning.
I want to call a short recess so that we can just chat a little with them, and they really need to go. So I also want to thank them for taking this time to come meet with us.
If I could make one
Go ahead, Scott.
one indulgence. We've talked about this in the past, the previous council that former Mayor Coughlin was on, and it's come up again, but it's Section 307 of your charter on signing and publication of ordinances. There's been an opinion rendered to the city, and it was rendered, I believe, last fall, that the city does not have the ability to publish ordinance summaries, so publishing an ordinance by summary. And just to bring to your attention, there was an ordinance, I believe it was adopted last year on the right-of-way that costs the city in excess of $850 to publish in your local paper, which is not an insignificant cost, obviously, to the taxpayers.
This item has been on our agenda for a
Okay.
couple of months.
Okay, I didn't know that, but it's something I would ask you to look at, think about, and, you know, you can compare it to the state statute that requires, you know, the posting and making it available that anybody requests, but it came up again this week where a significant portion of an ordinance that has very minor revisions would have to be published in its entirety, and it's very costly for the city. So, and the taxpayers end up obviously paying that entire cost.
And that's because of state law?
It's because of your charter.
Well, the reason-
And state law for statutory cities, but statutory cities do have the ability under Chapter 412 to publish by ordinance summary if there's a 4/5 vote of a 5-member council. So it's a supermajority vote. But if there's an ordinance summary that does summarize what's in that ordinance that the council, on a 4/5 vote, believes describes it fully so people will understand it, then it can be published by summary.
And that's by state law, that supermajority?
Yeah, that's
That's state statute on it.
Chapter 412-191 subdivision 4 is where that's referenced, which, I mean, that would be the suggested language you use if you were to put something in the charter, that obviously it's not just a simple majority, the council has to agree, this is informing the public of what's been adopted. So, just a suggestion I thought I'd make since I was here.
I went through one of the lengthy revisions
Yeah.
a couple months ago, and it was huge.
Yeah, and it's not insignificant, I mean, it's a substantial cost now with publishing those.
So let's recess for 5 minutes and let these people
Thank you.
think about it. Thank you, Scott.
Move to approve as presented.
I have one correction. The second item under unfinished business says discuss a response in a meeting of the whole. The word meeting should be committee.
I'll accept that. Move with that correction.
Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Part of the report that is in my section under the report to the chair pertaining to roll call vote, I've already read. I won't go through that again. I would answer questions if anybody has them. If there are none, I would like to read a section on the meeting, what I called the meeting of the whole, is really the committee of the whole. And this came to my attention actually a couple of months ago, and I had to do quite a bit more research myself because although I had heard the term many times, I was never in a situation where we had to ever implement it or use it, and I just didn't know exactly what it meant. But it turns out in Robert's Rules of Order that there is a term called the Committee of the Whole with 3 alternate forms, and the Committee of the Whole and the alternate forms are devices that enable the full assembly to give detailed consideration to a matter under conditions of freedom approximating those of a committee or subcommittee. Under each of these 3 procedures, any member can speak and debate on the questions or any amendments for the same length of time that would be allowed by the Assembly's rules, and as often as they are able to get the floor. Under the regular rules of debate, he cannot speak another time on the same question as long as a member who has not spoken is seeking the floor. Each of these 3 devices is best suited to assemblies of a particular size. A full committee of the whole is suited best to a large assembly. A quasi-committee of the whole is suited best to a group of about 50 to 100 members. An informal consideration is suited best to a small meeting of ordinary societies for the discussion of the assembly which are not voted on again. what I'm basically recommending is that we consider, we have a couple of mechanisms in Robert's Rules of Order. One of the things that Robert's Rules of Order actually recommends for groups under 15 is that they would operate normally in an informal setting similar to a meeting of the whole. And they would never go out of that or into it as a process, but that they would go to a more formal recognition of Robert's Rules of Order for a larger group when they vote on significant issues. When they have a final draft of a document that they want to propose that it be published and that kind of thing, that they would use more formal rules. But when they draft those documents, they would work as a committee of the whole, and that they would just do that automatically. They wouldn't actually make a motion. In more formal setting, they recommend that you recess the body into a committee of the whole for a specified time. Say, I move that we recess to a committee of the whole for 30 minutes to discuss this specified thing. And at the end of that time, or sooner, if they complete the task, they would do what's called rising and reporting to the chair. In an informal meeting of the whole, the chair of the meeting chairs the meeting of the whole. In all other classifications, the quasi and the full group meeting of the whole, someone else chairs that, and they report to the chair of the body. So what I find is that we've been bogged down quite a bit in the last few months trying to figure out a mechanism to discuss whether it be the letter or the drafting of a resolution, because we are trying to carefully consider the rights of the individuals in a Robert's Rules of Order environment, and somebody makes a motion, and that means the motion has to be amended, and the second paragraph has got a typographical error, and we have to make a motion to amend it and discuss it, and that process is really too formal for the kind of work that we have to do. And so Robert's Rules of Order recommends that kind of work be done in large groups, in subcommittees, but in smaller groups, in an informal meeting or committee of the whole. And so I just want to throw that out, and there's 15 pages here on all the fine print about, yes, Dan?
I have to leave. I would just simply state that I would concur with your reasoning on that. Would be certainly open to that being the mechanism by which some of these more difficult things can be addressed.
Okay.
And then, although I'm not going to hang around to make the motion, I would consider, given the discussions here, if you just allow me, I would just throw out for consideration that we lay over the discussion of the letters and anything else. If we can hammer out some sort of an amicable understanding with the administrator and the city attorney, I think the discussion of this is kind of moot if they can come up with something that we're in agreement with. I think it's an
Certainly,
exercise.
the motion to lay over is in order.
I can't make it because I've got a trilateral commission meeting I got to go to.
I don't see any problem with you not having made it.
Okay.
I mean, I can, unless you don't want to make the motion, you can just have made the motion.
I can make the motion and we'll let you guys discuss.
Dan moves that we lay over the discussion of the letter in section 602 sub 3 until we have a chance to work out the details we discussed tonight with the attorney and the administrator. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'm deeply hurt because I have my computer set up to do the letter online. No, I'm just giving you a hard time. Actually, I agree with the motion. Hearing no other discussion. All those in favor, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. I'm sorry. I'm out of order.
Some will stay around and watch later if you want.
Early, you could watch him set it up, though.
Yeah, if you were here earlier, you could see me going through all the problems to get it all
It's a
working.
good job. Good setup, John.
Good practice, right?
Yeah, good practice. We'll do more of that later. Okay. Are there any questions or any suggestions on how formal or informal this body would like to be in handling a committee of the whole.
Mr. Chairman, just to give you some information of what this was like originally, that's the way we worked. It did require patience, and but we hammered through the charter. It took many moons to accomplish it, but we tried to have the flexibility so that we didn't miss anything. You know, that was the key thing here. It isn't hard for me to look at 6023 because I don't have a problem with it, and it worked fine in its inception, and the first council that had used it. I'm just saying that that is the process we used, and very seldom did we have to hammer somebody to order.
Okay, well, I guess one of the things I would like to have some direction from you while we discuss it is, do you prefer that we be more formal and actually announce a committee of the whole to work on a subject? Or would you prefer we just operate in an informal committee of the whole, unless we have a motion of the kind of, if we're going to do a resolution, we're going to go to Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah.
We're going to make a motion, but at that point, I would expect it to be pretty well ironed out. We've got a document, we agreed to it, we've finished our finessing of it, and we want to send it on to the city. We're going to type it up, we're going to review it, and we're going to make a motion, just like we have done in the past.
We've got a little more technology now than what we had, you know.
Yeah.
Ruth would run home, and we'd meet again the next day or the day after.
Recorded.
Yeah, it was and then pass out everything. Everybody had a copy of what we'd gone over, and then. But with technology now, and if you're willing to set it up, we can sure do a little better that way.
Yeah, we can do a lot of things that we couldn't do as easily before, so. And I expect we'll be setting it up most of the time now, so that we can live edit documents, print them if we want to, and read them, things like that. So, Michelle?
The only problem that I would have is that if we operate in a committee of the whole all the time, you know, how do we keep on subject? Rather, you know, oftentimes we start rambling on and on, we just get off the subject.
We could go read that, but a committee of the whole follows the same rules. The differences are in the freedom to draft changes. The agenda is still the guiding outline. The discussions that are off agenda, a call for order of the day is still in order. The question of whether or not the subject is germane is still in order. None of the actual rules of conducting business change, except for the number of times you can speak on an issue, changes drastically because you're not limited, so long as you give deference to anybody who hasn't spoken, who is seeking the floor.
Right.
And
That's
so
my big thing.
what changes is you don't make a motion to recommend a change.
And the secretary doesn't have to record all that.
And none of that is recorded. All of the other rules of order are still in place.
So
And
it's up to us to
the chair,
watchdog. I think we
the,
have to be more
the chair has the option to dispense with the meeting of the whole at any time and call, in the Robert Rules terms, you call for the meeting of the whole to rise and report. And rise doesn't mean stand, it's a technical term that means dissolve. And so if I felt that as a meeting of the whole, we were not accomplishing the task, and we needed to make a motion. We needed to end this discussion with this object. I have the prerogative as the chair to request the meeting of the whole to rise and report. That terminates the discussion of that subject and forces us to take it on the table as accepting motions and amendments and then passing it. I wouldn't expect that we would have to do that because the more normal rules of order, is it germane and are we on our agenda, would normally keep it in order. I mean, it's even it technically would have been in order for anybody after 20 minutes with Kathleen and Scott. Any member after 20 minutes could have called for orders of the day or simply said, are we exceeding the time limit on our agenda? I'm not saying that we should have. I'm just saying that that's the kind of thing that can easily go on and on and on, and there's lots of those kinds of things, and any member can bring us back to our agenda. So, any other thoughts on whether we should tend towards more formality or tend towards more informality?
I would have to agree, I like do informal.
I agree as well.
Tend towards informality, because that's been a problem. We've been spinning our wheels because of formality.
Well, that's why I'm doing this research, because I feel like we needed to discuss the issues of formality and Robert's rules and look at the mechanisms we have. Even under Robert's rules, we are provided clear mechanisms to do this kind of work. And we can be as informal, as a group of 10 or 15 members, we can be as informal as we choose. It's up to us. And we can actually operate, which is what's pretty clearly recommended, we can operate as if we are a committee of the whole all the time, except when we wish to do a formal document presentation. And that would be the only time.
It'd be very kind to the secretary, too, I think. That would have
Oh, it's much kinder to the secretary.
I not to labor this, but we can always get tighter if we have to.
Yes.
And this approach is the right way to go at this point.
Well, I don't know how germane this is, but I agree with the informality, but I think we all have to be more responsible possibly in pointing things out if one feels that one of the members is digressing a little bit and going on. So we try to stay to the time limits and the agenda as the chairman. Because I think that has been a problem
Well, one of the things that I'll caution you that we lose in the committee of the whole environment is in the committee of the whole, it's not required for a member to address the chair, to be recognized to speak. Although we don't do that anyway, but in normal Robert's rules, no member would be allowed to speak to an issue other than a point of order without first being recognized by the chair. Obviously, we've never been that formal, or maybe we've not had that kind of respect for each other. I'm not really sure which, but...
I didn't have to raise my hand, is that what you're saying?
But I'm much more comfortable acting more as somebody to try to just keep things on track and coordinate all of the discussion and make sure that the right stuff is here to work with and do some of the research than trying to make sure that everybody's recognized in order. But I do take it as a serious responsibility that everybody has an opportunity to speak too. So I'll tend to go down the road I think is required as long as everybody here agrees that that's the road we want to go down. I don't want to shove it down anybody's throat either.
I agree.
Go for it.
Okay, my 10 minutes is up a long time ago. I just thought that was a very important thing to get understood, so.
Does that require a motion that we
It
would operate in that way or not?
it wouldn't hurt anything, goes in the record at least somewhat that way.
I'll make a motion that the Charter Commission use the process of meeting as a committee of the whole and use technology along with that to make our meetings
More informal.
more informal.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we laid over the discussion of the letter in 602. We are now on discussion of removing chapters 10 and 11.
I read over 10 and 11, and I know that we are subject to state law on franchises. How would the franchise fee increase be addressed in state statute versus charter?
Yeah, we looked at that pretty closely, and it appears to be virtually identical.
Yeah,
And
I think the city attorney gave the city council bad information
Are you
on
talking now
franchise fee increase without a public hearing.
well,
It's
No,
pretty,
we're talking about two different things then.
well, part of
fee-
chapter 10
Yeah.
deals with the renewal or modification of
Yeah.
any existing franchise fee or of any franchise granted thereafter shall be subject to the same limitations and shall be granted in the same manner as a new franchise.
Yeah.
Now, having gone back this last couple weeks and read the letter the attorney wrote,
Mhm.
I have to quite frankly say that I do agree with his ruling. There was no modification to the franchise fee. The franchise fee was fixed at 4% in the negotiations of the contract some years before. The city implemented only 2.5% of that. And when they changed the implementation from 2.5% to 4%, that required no discussion with the franchisee or any negotiation or any modification to the franchise. So in legalistic terms that are specified in our charter, the charter specifies how franchises and contracts are negotiated in chapter 10, and they followed those rules when they negotiated that franchise. And they set a fee when they negotiated it of 4%, not 2.5. The city council chose to implement 2.5% of it.
No,
So,
that was increased. It was more than 2.5% originally, and then it was lowered.
well, all I'm saying is all of those,
Yeah.
all of those changes that they were making under the heading of adjustments of franchise fee were really a misnomer. And there's a lot of reasons for why it was done that way, but in his letter, what he explains is that according to the charter, when we negotiate the contract or change its terms, which is what we talk about,
Yeah.
when we go, or change its terms, we must do this with a public meeting. But we in fact did not renegotiate the contract. We did not change the terms of the franchise fee as specified in the contract with the public utility, and therefore we're in compliance with the charter. From a legal point of view, that certainly was true.
That's,
Yeah.
that's,
Again, you're
I
right about
agree.
the difference between...
it's
the-
legalese rather than
the-
legally correct.
If what was intended was when they changed the amount that the public is paying, there should be a public meeting, then certainly, clearly they didn't do it. But what's written here is that when every extension, renewal, or modification of any existing franchise or of any franchise granted thereafter. Now, that refers to
Anytime,
the document.
anytime, John, in real law, in the past, in real law, when there's a doubt, it should have gone back to the original intent, and that was to inform the public.
Yes.
And that's what's being abused.
And that's what's being abused, but I think that, like I discussed a couple months ago,
Mhm.
if we're going to try to draft updates to the charter
Yeah.
in the taxation section and in the budgeting process that deal with public awareness and informing the public,
Yeah.
we need to do it in quite a different manner than some of the legalese that's in here now. And clearly, Chapter 10 and Chapter 11, as Duke Addix told us, have significant issues with the public understanding them,
Mhm.
significant issues with enforcement, and are already covered entirely now by Public Utilities Commission, state statutes, and things like that, that really have more significant bearing than ours do. We don't currently expand on those in any significant way. And where we do, like that 1005, the wording currently is of no benefit to us, because it clearly is too legalistic.
Mr. Chairman, that isn't your recommendation, or are we suggesting that those be removed with Scott Riggs' advice that there be some reference to charter, to franchise?
To state statute.
Be left here,
Yes. that-
pointing to the state statute.
Precisely, I think that with that caveat that we leave 1001 stating that in Lowndes' view, the state statutes apply in this area. The technical wording of that, we have to
Right,
come to
has to
agreement
be,
on.
right.
But,
If I can just bring something up here. The public doesn't have generally an idea of how government works. That's bottom line. They're not getting it in school. They get news reports that are off the wall. The reason why we did include as much as we could, and we put it in lay language. We tried to avoid the legalese in doing this, so that the public would have an idea of what's going on. And I think the average person could pick this up and read the charter and have a basic understanding of how our city government works versus the others, other cities. They're filled with legalese, and, well, some of them have tried to use our form and have used our form since this charter was written. But if we don't have some information on franchises, the general public probably wouldn't have a clue in the future. So, I'm just saying that we think about that too, so that there's a base. Government is hard to deal with, and having some understanding of how government works, that was one of our key things in doing the charter, was to have something the public could pick up a copy and basically understand how it's supposed to work.
It's interesting here on section 10.02, term, no perpetual franchise or privilege shall be created, nor shall any exclusive franchise or privilege be granted for a period of more than 25 years. Isn't that 25 years? When does that expire?
Well, they aren't perpetual, and that's how they're put together.
yeah, that
even
just
under
means
state law.
that every franchise entered into by the city has to be renewed at least every 25 years. It doesn't keep them from going on for 100 years. It just means that they have to be renewed, and the language has to be reviewed. And that's also in state statute. Yeah.
What is the big problem with just leaving it alone?
Well, the only problem with living alone is that the state statutes, well, in some cases, I think the state statutes now require 20 years. When you don't, as the state statutes slowly migrate to changing their terms, and we in the charter have specified something that's no longer exactly the same, now we require us to synchronize our charter with state statute, because we can't be contrary to it.
But we have a general override on that?
Yeah,
No,
the state statute takes precedence.
No, on some things, state statute, on some things, the charter takes precedence. Unless, what it comes down to is that in the state statutes, if the state statute in question doesn't specifically override a charter in its language, then the charter overrides the state statute, unless it's an area of a commission of a crime. I mean, there's a whole list of things.
Okay, so it does. What difference does it make then? If it's 25 years or 20 years, what is the problem?
The point is, state statute takes precedent. If our charter conflicts with state statute takes precedence, does it not?
Not always.
Well,
All right.
let me...
Couple of attorneys here, do you know?
Give you an instance here.
Well, I mean, just like Scott Riggs was saying, if the statute says that, the limit on a franchise is 20 years, it's going to be 20 years, irrespective of what our charter says.
So what
Well,
problem does that give us?
That's not necessarily true. If that statute, according to section 410, it describes the charter privileges. One of the reasons for doing a charter is to modify state statutes for your locality.
Sure.
So if the state statute in question doesn't specifically say that this statute cannot be overridden by a charter, then it can be. And many statutes now do, in fact, supersede any charter provision to the contrary. But there are many that don't, and we have the authority under the state statutes and constitution to be more restrictive or less restrictive on those statutes that don't preclude the charter modifying.
Well, if it's the same point, I think that I disagree with that. The charter is going to lose every time. If it's an express point as far as time limits or duration of a franchise, the statute's going to win out every time, irrespective of whether there's language in the statute that says, that this will supersede any charter that is done by home rule or by statutory city.
Well, what if the statute does win? What sort of an operational problem does that really give us?
Well, I guess the reason that Duke brought it up is because of the confusion that it has created in assisting cities to write charters, which is what he does a lot of. And should it be in a charter or should it not be in a charter? And the reason it shouldn't be is because it requires maintenance,
On a
I
new
think-
charter?
even in an old charter.
Mr. Chair, I think Bill's point is well taken about being able to help the public be informed. But if we have a situation where a section of our charter is overridden, and that's not clear, then clearly we haven't advanced the cause of understanding of government if unbeknownst to the reader, this is not even remotely close because it's been overridden. Therefore, we have a choice, it seems. We have a choice to either say, we need to keep this statute in place for the good reason that Bill pointed out, but we have to keep it synced with state statute. That's one choice. The other is just simply take it out and say, refer to state statute. It seems that those are the choices before us.
Well, I'd like to add one thing to that. If, and we haven't done the research yet, but if the state statute that we're talking about has been modified 4 times in the last 20 years, and they're mostly semantics or changing a time limit, and it's been on the record for 20 years, pretty clearly stated, and in itself it's understandable, I have no problem with referring to the state statute. But some of the state statutes we might refer to are 60, 70 pages long, and you can't interpret them without 2 lawyers. And then we have a reason to try to put clearer language in the charter.
Well, I think
So
that-
you're arguing for keeping them in sync in those cases.
In those cases, I would say we would have to keep it in sync.
I just think the clarity that you're going to seek by doing that isn't really possible in the language, to try to keep it in simple
Sometimes it is,
language.
though. And in this case, for instance, 25-year reference, if that's something that's out of sync, you can just put down that privilege be granted
No,
to a
I'm kind
period
of
of...
supporting the point that you were making earlier,
Yeah,
in the sense that the language that this was originally drafted in was just intended to give, normal laypersons an ability to understand what's going on. The clarity that you would seek by using more technical language to be more, commiserate with state statute is, it's not going to be as clear as something that's going to be very general. And I think, it's pretty simple to say, or as stated by state statute. I think that's clear that, one, this is just a general principle, but two, the end and all be all is always going to be the state statute, which it is. And I think the point that you make is a really good point, and why the charter is there, is that it's supposed to give the citizens just a baseline of what their rights and what the duties of government within the locality are. And so, giving a general blueprint with general language, I think is more beneficial than something that says, go look up Minnesota Statute 410.
Who's going to do that?
yeah.
Who's going to go to a law library to look that up? Who's got the time to do that? Other than somebody who does it for a living, So.
That's why it's kind of important to have some of these
Yeah.
thoughts in here and not
Yeah.
just say refer to state law.
I agree.
But we do have to somehow keep them in sync.
Yeah.
And I think there's
And-
simple
and we can
language that we
work
can
that out.
eventually work
Yeah.
towards that would keep it in sync. A
Mhm.
catch-all provision.
Yeah.
The language of this section of the charter is meant to be read,
Some of
in,
these... Some of these were the same as statutory city. And what the problem we had with statutory city was the citizenry coming before the city council for anything had no rights. City council can blow anybody off under statutory city. They can, you can,
That's why we're home rule.
yeah, exactly. And we're still I've seen the example of a council member asking questions and getting blown off on a 4-1 vote, not allowed any information. Have you used the Freedom of Information Act to get information as a council member in the past?
John, I'd just like to interrupt just briefly I did call the chair earlier today and told them that I had to leave at 8:30, so I'm just going to ask your leave at this point in time, so hopefully that doesn't disrupt the meeting.
No, and thanks for
Thanks for coming.
Being here.
Appreciate you, Dan.
I'd like to know what the state statute that covers this, how much is in there, so that we can kind of weed through that and see how we could possibly even use some of what we have here and plug it in. I hope
I'll
that's
be
not...
glad to leave this with the chair and so
Thanks, Dan.
But it's, I will need it back. But
Yeah.
It's my copy, but I will eventually need it back. But you can take it for now, John.
I appreciate
Dan,
that.
that stuff's not on internet?
Yes, it is.
Oh, it's sure it's on internet,
It's-
but you have to access it by Westlaw, which costs money.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah, well, all the statutes are online. I look at it almost every day, but
Thanks,
but
Dan.
not all the
Right
stuff
now.
in this book is annotated. Okay.
It's all the important stuff.
Yeah, well, I think that in defense of Duke Addicts, who really made a recommendation that we take a look at taking them out, the reason is because over and over and over, as he works with cities, they've come up with problems synchronizing them. And working with them has become, in his mind, more of an albatross than a solution. And there's always been, as he stated, questions about whether this thing that we've said does clearly capture somehow what the state statutes are. And well, but when I went back 5-6 months ago, when we first talked about it at all, and looked at the state statutes that I had in my possession that were forwarded from when you wrote the charter, and they were still in the notes. I didn't find this huge body of undecipherable language. In fact, it appeared that mostly what you did is took the statutes that were on the book at the time and wrote them pretty much the way they were, only shortened. And so I do think that if we find that today, those sections on franchises are still similar to this, only some of the limits have been changed and some of the clauses have been changed, that I don't see a problem with referring to it. That other than even that requires maintenance. I was looking up all of these sections on Robert's Rules of Order and all the sections and all the numbers, and even one of the attorneys I talked to who had sent me some reference numbers from state statutes, and when I got out to the web to look at them, they were no longer in 471, they were now in 13D. And quite clearly, if we put in a state statute number, which we already have in some places, then over a period of years, we have to check and see whether those statute numbers are still there. So there's a lot of issues there, but I think that his point was that these sections require maintenance due to changes in state statute. And in his opinion, it was easier to take them out because they don't solve the currently existing problem. Clarifying these issues, in his mind at least, doesn't solve an existing problem. And I say in our case, because of 1005, which was misinterpreted numerous times over the last few years, if anything in our case, it's caused more confusion than it's answered a question.
I think part of it was because that term franchise fee for the 4%, that should have been called something different.
Well, it really is based on the franchise fee. And when that discussion came up, and I went around and I actually bought into Dwayne's argument that it should have been called an energy tax. Now after the fact, I have to change my mind because its entire adoption was based on this section of franchise fees.
It was sold on that basis.
It was sold on that basis, and it was developed on that basis, and in fact, it's based on a negotiated contractual franchise fee with the utilities that allows them to do it. And in fact, if they didn't do it, then the utilities would raise your bill in another way. They would just change your rate. They have the right to do it, and they would, proven by numerous cases. So it's not a simple discussion, and that fee that they charge is based on a contractual, negotiated franchise fee, and so I think it should be called a franchise fee. And I think when they change its rate to the public, there should be a public meeting. But that's not the way we wrote it. We wrote it so that they only have to discuss it if they go back and renegotiate the contract, not if they change what they charge the public. So it's too complicated for the language of the charter the way it is, to be clear.
But originally, it wasn't sold to the public on the basis that it would be a percentage of your electric use. It was sold to the public over here that it was a requirement to pay for the engineering costs that the city provides to the utility in carrying out their business. You know, isn't that right, Bill? That's the way it was sold.
That's the way it's worded in the state statute, actually. And that's why that discussion is sold to the public.
In allowing for this particular item, we did have a choice there. And we went over this chapter and we got the verbiage that we felt we needed.
Don't use that word verbiage.
Wording.
The wording.
Adjectively.
We got them their words together.
You look at what Webster says about that word.
And that was something that I feel bad about, because I'm the one, I remember specifically saying, nobody uses it, it's there, maybe there's a purpose in the future, and I should have there was a couple that wanted to just leave that out and not allow the franchise, that fee that could be charged to the public.
Anyway, I would definitely concur with the fact that we need to do some review on how they currently match state statutes, and I'll do some of that, and anybody can feel free to do it if they have a chance. Look at what's currently in the state statutes that compares with chapters 10 and 11. I don't think you'll find anything in chapter 11 that would reasonably say we ought to keep any of it, because the concept of public ownership of power plants and stuff is, I don't think one that,
Well, we own the city water system, though.
but nothing in 11 precludes that or changes it. I think that I think that I agree with Duke and Scott both, that there's nothing in 11 that we would change by taking it out, now or in the foreseeable future. And so it just becomes meaningless in terms of it not addressing any known problem.
For the benefit of the public, this that's listening to us, Chapter 11 refers to the public ownership and operation of utilities.
Yeah. And it only really discusses large utilities in a manner that we don't expect a normal city of this size to ever do.
Because it says that the city may own and operate any gas, water, heat, power, light, telephone, or other public utility for supplying its own needs for utility service or for supplying utility service to private customers, consumers, or both, and so on.
Yeah.
Granted, we do have our own water, but as far as gas and telephone and electricity, we don't produce that here.
Well, anyway, I think that anybody that wants to come up with some arguments for keeping some language or keeping all of it and amending it should try to do that. And then we'll continue it as we get more information.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
When we look at Section 10, what we're going to do with that, I would suggest we again look at Resolution 2000-07 that specifically referred to franchise fees and requiring public notice of them. And I think we should look at that.
Well, like I stated earlier this evening, if we should look at it, and we should look at addressing it in terms other than Chapter 10.
Maybe, maybe not.
Unless we want to rewrite Chapter 10 in a manner
Well,
that goes
you're
beyond.
making changes to 10. I'm suggesting we look at this in light of making changes to 10. Whether it goes here or not, it deals with franchise fee. And this goes back to, if you're looking under franchise fee in the charter, that's when one would logically look for something on that. So I'm just saying we should look at this. Now's the time to revisit it.
Okay, our next agenda item is a mistake. But as long as it's there, I wanted to remind everybody what we did last month, and we do have a meeting on the 23rd, and I am making hopefully reasonable progress on setting that up. It will be here in the council chambers, and it will be a joint meeting with the Charter Commission and the City Council. And if anybody has any input on presenters or agenda, feel free to contact me.
What is the purpose of that?
The purpose of the meeting is to get a presentation on the whole concept of human rights. Not limited at this point in any way, it's just a human rights presentation.
I'm looking for
That's the August 23rd special meeting that we voted on last month. That was brought before the council, and they voted to attend it also as a joint session.
August 23rd?
August 23rd, 7 p.m.
Do you know what day that is?
Thursday. Yeah, it's
Thursday, I'm
It's
sorry.
a Thursday. It's the halfway point between our two meetings.
Thanks.
Is this considered now our joint meeting with the city council, or is it
No.
just?
No, in fact,
It's strictly
it's
human.
strictly human rights.
Okay.
they voted to not have it be a joint work session of any kind.
So the city council, the charter commission, and the human rights commission is
Well,
meeting?
the city council and the charter commission will be billing it as a joint
Okay.
session, and we'll get presentations from whoever I can coerce.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't say that. Strike that.
And the
Okay.
public, of course. can
And the
come.
public is obviously invited.
So they don't have to stay home and listen. They can come here.
They can come down here and listen in person.
And it will be broadcast.
I believe it's set up to be broadcast. I don't know the answer to that for sure, but that was the request. Okay, section 703. And again, we're still just, we've never even come down to actually deciding a procedure on that. I agreed to get you some more information about other charters, and I haven't had an opportunity to do that. But I put it on the agenda tonight at least so that we'd have the opportunity for those that weren't here to bring forward new ideas about the process and how we come to even a method of dealing with the whole issue of taxation, because it's such a significant issue.
Can we say what it is?
Taxation?
Yeah.
Well, section 703, as it currently is
System of taxation, under taxation and finances.
currently it states, subject to the state constitution, and except as forbidden by it or by state law, the council shall have full power to provide ordinance for a system of local taxation. The authority includes the power to by ordinance to assess, levy, and collect taxes on all subjects or objects of taxation, except as limited or prohibited by the state constitution, by this charter or by state laws imposing restrictions upon the city, irrespective of charter provisions. That's really all it says about a system of taxation. There are continued issues in Chapter 7 about submission of the budget and the budgeting process, but we have an example of what was done, is it Fridley?
Yeah.
In the city of Fridley, in their section on taxation. That's been handed out, everybody should have a copy. And we talked about using that as a template for a starting point and going forward. We've also talked with some of the people in the city of Fridley that would be willing to come and talk with us a little about both the process they went through and some of the problems that it created, in their opinion. And I'm willing to go down both of those areas of discussion. I also will continue to find other examples from other charters and bring them for our use. But my real question is, does anybody have any recommendations for other means that we can use to research those issues? Or does anybody want to become part of that process so that they will go and help find some of the charters and some of that stuff? So I don't do it all.
I'd like to hear somebody from Fridley come in and tell us what they've gone through. They have a lower tax rate than Moundsview.
Mr. Chairman, it might be beneficial for those of us that are newer to the council to understand, or to the commission to understand, the genesis of this issue in terms of why it's on our agenda. Why are we discussing this matter? Why is it important that we do that?
Well, I think that the real genesis is that we started looking at how do we provide a mechanism where the public is better informed about both when and how taxes are modified, what the taxes are, what restrictions should the charter place on the system of taxation. Currently, we don't put any restrictions, but many charters do. In fact, I think some go way too far, and ours doesn't address it. And so when we reviewed things like TIF, when we reviewed the levy amount, when we reviewed, this is 3 or 4 years ago, when we reviewed the current budgeting process, and there's a lot in our charter on budgeting process, but even the franchise fee, does it clearly, there was a lot of discussion on the franchise fee as to whether that set of restrictions about the public meeting should fall under a discussion of franchise fees or under a more general subject of taxation in general, so that the wording of it would allow it to not be misunderstood or worked around semantically. If we really are more concerned that we lay out a clear process for the public to be informed when the rates they're paying on something change, that's a much more general issue than just the franchise fee. And if we want to accomplish that, it needs to be done in Section 7.
So our goal for touching it at all would be to provide greater information to the citizens of Mounds View about changes in taxation.
Well, that would be one of the goals. I mean, there's obviously a number of possible goals. One of the stated goals was to have the public be more informed about the system of taxation. Another stated goal was to restrict the council from doing things that we feel are beyond reasonable limits of taxation.
Without public approval.
Without public approval.
Direct public approval.
Well, in some cases, the request was to set hard limits. No approval, period. You just can't go beyond. Like, one of the discussions on TIF, which was recommended actually by a state-appointed agency, which did a review, and we got that review and we read it, and some of us have copies, was that the cities should be restricted to not going over 15% of their budget capacity.
Against our 24 at present time.
Well, we're at about 24, but whether that 15% is a reasonable level is certainly debatable. But that was a case where a recommendation was made, and that recommendation was made to the state legislature, that they would do it universally across the state. And whether or not that would apply to charter cities was even a question raised. But depending on how they do it at the legislature, it can actually supersede any charter. But the whole question is, what restrictions are reasonable? And we can show you a number of examples from charters that have caused the cities
So going down the tubes.
huge problems for certain groups of their residents, like the ones farther from downtown, that the way they wrote the charter means they don't get sewer service. Pure and simple. The charter doesn't allow it because of the process they put in place for assessments, and because of that, they now have several thousand people with no city sewer who drastically want it, but can't have it until they amend their charter. And amending the charter might not be easy to do when you've only got 10% of the citizens that are adversely affected, and 90% are okay. So I'm not saying that these are huge dangers, but we have to be careful that we don't go down some of those roads that people have gone down and created for themselves a problem.
So if I understand what you just said, there really are three goals that we might be pursuing here: distribution of information about taxation, requiring the public approval before there's a change, and setting some reasonable restrictions on it.
Yes.
And the reason that I'm looking for goals is because, to get back to your first question, that may define, if we can establish what our intent here is, that may help us define the process to get there.
Yeah, and I think that all three of those goals are valid, and we may choose any two or all three of them. I think we obviously must do two of them. We must craft something, if we're going to do it, that brings more public awareness, clearly, of the process. And we must also do something that requires public approval of certain things, because those issues have been brought up over and over and over the last 5 years. And every composition of this commission over the last 5 years has felt unanimously, at least, not unanimously, the majority, that it needed dealt with.
I think the thing that started this was was the prohibition by state law against public referendum on resolutions. See? So, you know, so we're blocked right there. There are major issues, I think, that the public should get involved in by referendum.
In any case, I think those two objectives we must pursue if we're going to change it. And I think, well, my recommendation is that we do need to change it. Because right now, we don't have, there are too many areas in the system of taxation that the public's not made aware of. And so
And it is complicated.
It's quite complicated. And we can alleviate some of the complication just by specifying a process that people can learn more about it by using. And some of that is already in the Fridley one. I'm not proposing the Fridley one in its entirety, but I think it is a better starting point than what we have now.
I think we can learn. That's crucial.
I do think that going down that path is a difficult and complicated issue to address. And we will have to be willing to exert some effort to draft a good discussion about system taxation. It's as simple as that.
Just a comment, if I could. One basis of using the Fridley one is that they've gone through all the legal hurdles, so we don't spin our wheels there. At least we can use what's presented there. We know it's already passed muster, and so it's some basis to start from. That so we don't go way afield of things we can't do without paying to get legal interpretations on everything.
Last year, we asked the council to agree to limiting future tax increment financing to 15%. And we knew then that we were at about 23, now we're at 24. That's dangerous. It's not prudent government. And so if city staff who knows more about these issues is unwilling to tell the city council that you have to have some restraints in these areas, then it's up to the public to enforce restraints on government.
Why should the staff tell the council that? They have no incentive to do that.
Well,
as a matter of fact...
Eventually, the city is going to be in serious trouble.
Well, but that's eventually.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, I think there's a provision in a TIF law here that there are administrative costs that can be skimmed off, I'm using the term,
Yeah.
For the process. So they have no incentive here to be frugal on this.
Well, they're beyond frugal.
Wow.
At this
Being
point,
generous.
at this point, I don't think we want to go back to TIF, but I think that those of you who can do some research, whether it be web-based or look at other charters, the League of Minnesota Cities office downtown St. Paul has on file most of the charters from the cities of Minnesota. They're valuable resource information that somebody just needs to sit down and go through and find things, and I don't think I can do it all.
I'd like to start with Fridley, though, and let's bring somebody in. If
Yeah,
somebody's willing to come in and tell us what the process they went through, and we can ask questions of
How it's working.
what they ran up against. and
I'll try to arrange that.
Appreciate that.
What were those three things that you...
Well, I think it'd be good to have sort of at least a
Mhm.
general approval that we want to tackle, which of those three goals we talked about we want to tackle. Because we may spend a lot of time going after one that we decide we don't want to do. I
Yes.
agree with you, certainly the first one, information of public awareness is key and fundamental, obviously. And the second one, requiring the public approval for any changes, and the third was setting reasonable limits, right? Setting reasonable restrictions on change. Do we want to tackle all three of those, or
Well, doesn't
Does the
this,
Fridley law tackle all three of those, Bill?
I don't know.
I would say yes, it does, but let's not take my
But this,
opinion.
the ones you mentioned, goal 2 and 3, they kind of work in tandem.
Certainly, certainly. All three really do, yeah.
Yes, it does do all three. It speaks significantly to adopting ordinances, declaring the necessity for additional tax levy, specifying the purpose for which additional tax levy is required, holding a public hearing pursuant to a 3-week published notice in the official newspaper, adopting after the public hearing for such tax levy an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the council members. In addition, the tax levy shall take effect only if 51% or more of the votes cast on the levy question are in favor of adoption.
did they have trouble getting this passed?
They took it to referendum.
It's on referendum.
I-
It was done by referendum.
Can you get us copies of those?
It's
So
all
I've
been
already handed
handed
out to
them all.
everybody.
What meeting did we get them at? Two weeks ago? Or 2 weeks
Oh,
ago?
This was probably January.
What's that?
But some people are new here that,
But I think he,
Didn't you pass the
Yeah,
new
yeah,
ones?
I gave them to
out
new
last
people.
time?
Yeah.
okay,
Time before.
Yeah, I gave them specifically to new people as they came on.
okay.
But we-
We're old.
We can hand them out again at any point. Just, when we get to working on it, we'll certainly make more copies available. But clearly, it does do some of all of these things. I would say it does very little in the specific area of restriction. Mostly, it does it in the area of public meetings and public approval.
and just one comment, I think another reason that I would find it advantageous to look at the whole thing as a system of taxation is because we keep referring to a levy limit that we're gonna put on. But we don't really talk about the franchise fee money coming in, surface water management fee, streetlight utility fee, water meter fee, and now the new one with the water line coming to your house fee, whatever they call it. See, all these additional fees come out of your other pocket, but they're not talked about. And I think at least Fridley tries to address all money that's coming in, to look at it as a whole. You know, and I'm just saying, that's one of the, I think we have too many fees that are spread out that people aren't really aware of, and they should all be kind of brought to the fore and redocumented in some form.
City has over $600,000 slush fund that was over-collected in public improvement bonds. And originally, it was around $2 million. But what's left is something over 600,000. Instead of implementing an added fee for fixing sewer hookups that break, or could have used that money instead. That's something you might discuss with the council sometime. Yeah.
We don't want to know what you heard.
And also another fund is the interest fund off the TIF money that can be used for stuff. But,
Oh, yeah, street improvements.
Right.
Yeah.
well, if you do that, then you spend down that fund. If you just create a new fund, then you've tapped a new source, and it's better overall for the city to tap a new source, because then you got money coming in all the time.
It's always more.
What are you hunting for now?
Well, I was going to show you something. Oh. Okay, well, so I will try to arrange for one or more people to really come discuss that process. And anybody that wants to can try to get us more information from other charters. If you can send it to me I'll probably reformat it and get it put in the packets or whatever, but I think that, well, I agree with Bill that we ought to discuss a little bit if we want to do all three of these things and approve it so that we know what direction we're trying to go.
What are some of the cities that have had problems with?
Lino Lakes.
Lion Lakes has a restriction on the streets somehow.
Their assessment restrictions are pretty severe. There's some of them.
Well, I've gone over some of that, and it's not as severe as it's, legalese has taken it.
Yeah, I would say its
to
first
the-
reading doesn't appear
Yeah.
to be all that critical, but the result of the interpretation of it has caused very serious problems, which is one of the issues with trying to be even generically too restrictive. And I think that, well, I'll state it again, which I've stated before, if you target a specific fundraising capability of a city or a government body real stringently, they'll quit doing that because you forced it. They'll find another way to get the money. We need to, in my opinion, concentrating on public awareness and the ability of the public as a body to have an impact, rather than trying to write down in black and white what the hard-coded restrictions are. I mean, if so you do effectively restrict TIF funds to, I don't care, 10%, they'll find another mechanism to bond money. They won't use TIF, they'll do it another way. If they can still just do it, and the public doesn't have to be aware of it, and the public doesn't have in place a clear mechanism to require approval, you haven't changed the amount of your taxes any, or how it gets worked. What we need to do is provide clear definitions of how the public is informed, more so the public is aware of how they will be informed, maybe even than the requirement that the council or whoever is doing it. The public needs to be aware clearly in a document that's published that they have these avenues for awareness. That doesn't guarantee they will do it, but there are a certain percentage of the public who will avail themselves of any mechanism we provide. I think that those kinds of targets are more important than trying to come up with a clearly defined code of restrictions, which will change over time anyway. We'll create our own maintenance nightmare. Okay, is everybody comfortable with that, or do we still need to do some more with it?
I am frequently down at the Capitol and know where the League of Cities building is. I've never been in it, but if there's some, I have this awesome fear of walking in there and seeing huge volumes of and asking somebody, could I have some information on taxes and...
No, I would say that the objective, if you went there, would be clearly to look through charter cities' provisions that are already written into charters on their system of taxation. And clearly, according, I talked to Ducal, that most of them actually are similar to ours. They were written from one of the model charter templates, and there's not a lot in there. His opinion was, from his memory, there's probably a dozen or so charters that deal in a different way than we do with taxation.
That's what I was going to ask you.
If we
Is there a
can,
way
if we
to
can
find out
identify,
which those are?
I think you probably sit there, and there's only 100 and some charters. And I actually have a list of those cities that have charters, but they have it too. I think that unless they have some indexing, which I'm not aware of, all you can do is look through the charters, find their section on taxation and look at it. And if it's the same as ours, put it back in the bundle. Look at the next one.
30 years ago, they were pretty helpful.
Pardon?
30 years ago, they were very helpful. You could go in and get information. I've been down there for a long time.
They've been very, very helpful to me on the phone. They've sent me a lot of stuff, some of which I've passed out here, but I've not been down there.
Is that the building that's on the northwest corner
West corner.
of Ryerson University?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So, if some of you want to tackle some of that, it'll certainly help.
Give you an
Okay.
excuse to go in here.
Okay, and our last agenda item, as far as discussing future agenda items itself and the process to prioritize them. I mean, we still have, obviously, a considerable amount of stuff that we've already started. And I want to reiterate that I'm going to keep it our goal, if I can, to try to take as much off of the plate that we've already got on it before we add more. We still need to prioritize those things that we have on our plate more clearly, as far as I'm concerned. And whether or not, how much in each meeting do we want to devote to a specific topic? And I've been doing these on my instinct.
I think you did pretty good.
Right.
You know, we went through a lot of,
I think we clearly do a lot better when we have this kind of a time setting, at least, as a goal.
yeah.
And that's the way I'll continue to go, but I think I also want to continue to get input on the body's preference for priority, so that people constantly keep me aware by some mechanism, whether we vote on it or whether we just talk about it, of what's important to each of you. Because I don't want to spend a whole evening on taxation and ignore what we're doing with 602 if half of you would rather be working on 602, sub 3, so.
You know, when you were welcoming new members,
Yeah.
you know, maybe we could do that again and find out what is important to people. And find out where some of us are on certain things, and I don't know.
I think
Just an idea.
that might be a good idea. I think that we should maybe do that. Well, let me back up a bit. My view of reports of members, which is on our agenda every night, is that's somewhat how that should work. Each member that has an issue that they feel is important to discuss during that section should state their views. Ask a question, say that they found this information. I mean, that's one of the points of that is, one of you goes down to the League of Minnesota Cities and you find this thing. Under reports of members, you summarize what you found and pass out copies.
Right. What I'm thinking is maybe we can get a consensus of, you know, maybe there's one or two issues that seem to be important to the majority, and, you know, kind of set priorities that way. I don't know, it's just an idea. Set priorities, you know, what's the main thing that's important to most of us, you know? Do I make sense?
Yeah, I think if what you mean is, let's go around the circle and have everybody tell us a little bit about why they like being on the Charter Commission or why they want to be on the
Right.
Charter Commission,
Right.
and then what would they like to see us work on? We can make a list, or I'll make a list, and we can talk about which of those are most important.
Just to get some consensus so that we're not,
And maybe
You know.
even a basic philosophical approach, you know.
Well,
Are you for weakening the charter, strengthening it? Or what's your purpose of being here? You know, they came out of nowhere, and it's not a very, you know, fun meetings to have. They're kind of boring, so, you know.
I've never had the opportunity to get bored. I don't know about you. Maybe I'm the one that's boring everybody. Well, I'll start.
Or are we going to do that as a future, you mean?
yeah, let's future.
Well,
Future agenda.
Do you want to do it in the future, or do you want to do it now?
No, I think we should do it when we get more majority of people here. I don't
There's
think
not a
so.
seven left.
Yeah.
I guess when it comes to something like that, there's been a lot of backbiting going on here and stuff, and if we can have a decent discussion on past, present and future of where the charter should go, maybe we can stop some of that because we know where we stand now. And it'll be the vote that counts after that.
I'm not so sure if it should be a question and answer sort of a thing.
No,
You know, just,
no, it's just a general
Yeah.
statement of what you think about the charter, the past, the present, and where you think it should go in the future.
Yeah, why are you serving? For what purpose?
Right, where you going? What you
Yeah,
what
what's
you would
with
like to
you
see out of the
anyway?
charter? Huh?
No, to find out what, I want to find out what people think, yeah, it's
Sure.
important. What should we work on?
Should we be working on anything?
Yeah.
I hope the public gets involved in this and, you know, sort of gets people out here once in a while and,
I had a big surprise here. Ran into somebody down at a restaurant, and he says, "Oh, you're on the charter commission," and he said he appreciated what we were doing here, and so there are people out there. And,
At least
and
there's
they-
one.
There's gotta be two, because another guy at my work mentioned the same
Yeah.
thing. He lives in Moundsview here. Surprised me too.
Well, I've talked to several people too, actually.
So,
but they should come down here, you know, and
Yeah.
kick us in the head, I mean, you know, what the heck?
Jonathan, I think you had at one point a list of priorities. I remember when I first joined, you had a list of those topics that were possible items for our consideration. And I wonder if that would be worth republishing, or if things have been added to that.
Well, I now have probably 3 pages of those things. I'm not really sure if I want to go there. I think that an awful lot of the things I originally listed were things from the past. Well, they were all things from the past.
But I think as chair, you must have some sense for the top 10 things that would be likely candidates for consideration. I mean, not that we must do all 10, but some feeling for what.
Yeah, I do.
Well, I think that'd be a good start. At least it would be for me.
I'll redo that. And I'll tell you one of them that's been on my list since before I started, when I was even asked to talk about it, it was called a mission statement. And maybe, if you don't all mind, I would like to put that in our round-the-table discussion.
Yeah.
What would you see as the mission in a simple statement? Something that we can all take everybody's comment and start from somewhere.
By going around, you ought to be able to tell what they think the mission is, and maybe we can come to some kind of
I think if we as a group can generate a mission statement that is clearly what we all agree is our mission, then it'll make our job a lot easier. And I just think that that's one of the things that we can assist with around the table. If everybody states something about what they feel our mission is, we can start to coalesce those ideas. I'm not going to put our mission statement development on one of the next couple of agendas, but I want everybody to continue to think about it. And maybe we can put that in our round the table as one of the things to discuss. Everybody okay with that?
Sounds right.
I have no more business.
What comes under new business?
Any new business? I didn't put any new business on, 'cause I think we have enough on our plate.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Who adjourned?
We now have some new business, thank you. You reminded me. This is something that's come up over and over again. and
Oh,
just-
he already adjourned?
Doesn't matter. No, he didn't. That's what I want to point out. He didn't adjourn.
Oh,
Even if we voted to adjourn, he didn't adjourn. And that's why this is important. I've seen this numerous times in recent meetings, where somebody made a motion to adjourn in the middle of something, and somebody else objected to the motion to adjourn. And even when a parliamentarian was sitting there, and they asked the opinion of the parliamentarian said, a motion to adjourn is not debatable.